All right. Well, my clock says noon, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And so, welcome everyone to the second version of the Share My Screen series on design for public health and research. And I am pleased today. Well, first of all, my name is Katrina Boylan, and I'm with the translational team at the Center for Injury Research and Policy at Nationwide Children's Hospital. The Center for Injury Research and Policy is one of our projects dedicated to education and outreach for injury prevention professionals, public health professionals, researchers, and really anybody who wants to learn how to communicate better. And so I am pleased today to have my wonderful colleague, Katie Donovan, who is the digital communication specialist on our team. She's going to be walking us through some of her tips and tricks on Canva for designing promotional graphics. And so before she gets started, I will say that we got a sneak peek of this yesterday, and I myself learned quite a bit and will be taking notes myself. So have your notes ready. But just in case you need to go back and look, of course, we will be posting this on YouTube within the next couple of weeks. Just a heads up, our YouTube channel is live, and so I'll be sharing some links at the end of this, so you can go out check out the previous presentation if you didn't attend that, along with some of the other materials we're starting to release on HealthCom. All right, Katie, I think you can take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Katrina. Thank you everyone for joining today. So like Katrina said, today I'm going to be walking you through some tips and tricks to use when designing in Canva. But we're going to take a look at it together while building a promo graphic for a webinar. So we're going to cover things like spacing, alignment, shapes, color, and a few tips along the way that we consider best practice just to keep it looking polished and consistent. So I am going to share my screen and we're going to walk through it together. So before we start, I'm going to show you the final product. So this is kind of what where we're going to end. This is a promo graphic we created for an upcoming webinar we're hosting for our program T4CIP. So yeah, this is kind of where we're going. But before I start designing, I always like to make sure I have all my assets first. So those are things like links, hashtags, photos, headshots, logos, titles, brand colors, all those great things. So I like to make sure I have all that collected first. So just a little note is usually when it comes to a promo graphic, specifically for like a webinar where we're asking them to register for something, we like to make a bit.ly link for the registration page. So that's preferably one that is easy to remember. So as you can see here, we have check before you change webinar. We do this because when it comes to social media graphics, PNG and JPEG files, you can't make links clickable. That's something you can do in like a PDF document, but not a social media graphic you'd share on like X, Instagram, Facebook, like that. So we like to have something that people can just kind of remember and type in themselves. And just a note is you can track the clicks on these. So also kind of a nice analytic to have. But that is kind of one point for best practice. Another one is for these kind of things, we don't usually use a QR code unless we're creating something that might be looked at not on a phone. So that could be a slide for a presentation, a brochure, a flyer for a clinic, something where someone might be looking at it with their phone with them and they can go ahead and scan it. But for this, we're designing this to be seen on, it's sized for Twitter, so, or X. So usually you're kind of looking on that on your phone. So we probably wouldn't use a QR code here. But yeah, so we're just gonna hop right in. I'm gonna start with this dark blue background. So I am gonna add a rectangle because I want to make this little header to differentiate between the text and the body. So I'm gonna press R and that'll give me a rectangle. So just a note, as I work through this, I'm going to throw out a couple little shortcuts that I like to use in Canva. So feel free, or hopefully you learn something from those. So So pressing R will give you a rectangle. I am going to make this light gray color. So I'm going to go click the color, then choose this light gray that's actually also in our branding for our program T4CIP, but I'm going to use this light gray. And I wanted to have this little kind of border element to just give a nice design element to break it up. So I'm going to click these border styles, and I can play with the border weight. I can play with the corner rounding. I can pick different kinds of the border, but I'm going to go for just a solid line. You got that. And I'm going to change it to be this light or this kind of nice blue color. So I've got my rectangle and I'm going to size it. I'm going to click on it and drag it and size it by playing with these little drag options on the side. So I only want it on the bottom. So I am going to just drag it so you can only see it on the bottom. So we're gonna kind of be looking at alignment a lot today, so I'm gonna point it out right away. These little rulers that Canva has for you, when you have it pop up in this long line, straight line, it means that it's centered. So we know that this is centered. And we've got kind of the background of our graphic done. So I'm gonna add text. So I'm gonna press T to add text, which is a little shortcut. And it'll just give you a text box. So I'm going to drag it up. I'm going to change the color because I want it to match this navy blue. And I'm going to type in my title. So let's check before you change webinar, child passenger safety webinar. Then press enter, second line, child passenger safety webinar. All right. So we've got our title, maybe play with the size a little bit, kind of dragging up here to make it bigger, smaller. And then for the sake of time, I'm just gonna kind of grab this, the information of the who, what, where, when, why, kind of, and just bring that to this, just so you don't have to watch me type it out. But we've got who it's hosted by, we've got our date, we've got our time, our registration link with our bit.ly. I decided to make it that light blue color to kind of match or make it pop a little bit. So I also kind of want to shrink the text box to make it just match exactly. So I'm going to double click on the right here on the right border of the text box, and it's going to shrink it to match. So I want these two things to be aligned with each other, to be centered. So I'm going to select both. So I've got one, I'm going to hold down shift, select the other, and I'm going to right click to the align elements tab. So I'm going to pick center. And now I know that these two are centered within each other. So just to make sure things look nice and polished, it's kind of best practice to make sure everything's centered and aligned on your graphic. So we've got that. And I want these to be centered within the whole graphic too. So I know that they're centered within each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to group them. So Command G will group these two elements together. And I'm going to click that again, right click, align to page, center. So now I know it's centered within the page. And if I play with it, it'll kind of show me that. So yeah. And another thing I like to check just to kind of get into the nitty gritty of the graphic is to sometimes check the pixels and the distance between everything. So if you hold down Option, or on a Mac, I believe it's Alt, it'll tell you the distance between everything. So we already knew this was centered, so 283, and then we know like 609 pixels, 13 from the top. So that's just kind of a nice feature to check, kind of drag over things and to make sure everything's aligned and kind of centered. So, all right, we've got our title. And then I'm going to drag these other design elements that we want to have. We have our car seat right here. We have our logo, and I kind of want all these to be aligned at the bottom just to be nice and polished. So I'm going to do that same thing. I'm going to select them all, right click, align, and click bottom. So then what Canva will do is the furthest element, it'll drag all those options to the furthest one. So I think the title, the text was the lowest one. So now all those match. So now we're just looking nice and polished. Everything's at the bottom, and kind of centered. So it's looking good. All right, so now we're gonna go and start on our headshots and our titles and all that. So I'm gonna go into the Elements tab and I'm gonna pull out a frame. So what's kind of different in Canva, a shape versus a frame, is a frame you can pick and then drag an image inside, and then the image will take up that shape. So they've got quite a few options. So you can get creative with what you want your graphic to look like, but I'm going to pick the circle and I'm going to pick 4 of those. So click on it 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we've got our 4 circles. So I want to shrink them because it's a little big, but I want them to all stay the same size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select them all, and then while holding down Shift and pulling at the right hand corner, I can make them bigger or smaller like that, and they all stay the same. So that is super helpful when trying to just make sure things are polished and all doing the same thing. So, all right, we've got our circles. Maybe I'll make them a little smaller. And I'm gonna spread them out to maybe a tiny bit smaller. Get spread out on the graphic. So I am gonna now, I want them to all be the same distance. So I think I want to have the leftmost one here and the rightmost one like there. And I want them all to be the same distance. So I'm gonna select them all again. And that's a different way too that you can select if you just kind of drag off to the side over all the elements you want. Just another way to do it. So I've got all 4 of my circles, and I'm going to right click again, and they have these spacing tabs. So, or spacing options. So I all want them to all have the same horizontal distance. So I'm going to click horizontally, and now they're all same distance. We could even go in and check. 51, 51, 51. So they're nice and spaced out. And now I want them all to be aligned to vertically, or kind of just all in one straight line. So I'm gonna select them all again, align elements, and I'm gonna click top. So now they're all aligned at the top too. So there we go, nice and polished. And you know what? I actually want them to be centered too in the graphic. So I grouped them together with that Command G, and I'm going to center them. So now they're all centered. And actually now I don't really want them to be all grouped together. So I'm going to do Command Shift G, ungroup it. So I think you also can do that by ungrouping. Yeah, like that. So there we go. We got our 4 circles. So as you can see, we have these little borders. So like we did earlier, I'm going to select my shape, then click this border style, and then make my border weight. So I think that looks good. And I'm going to change my color to be this green from our T4CIP brand toolkit. So we've got green, and like you see down here, I kind of alternate the colors. So I want this one to have the same thing. So I could go in and then remember, all right, it's a 14 weight, so I could change that. Or what I could do is I could select my element. I could click this copy style, feature and then click my circle. So now 1 and 3 have the same. And you know what? I want all 4 of them to have the same weight. So I'm just going to go in and do all 4 like that. So now they're all equal, but I kind of want this one to be that blue color. So I'm going to go in and just manually change that. So, all right, we're all lined up. We're all equal. Everything's looking polished. It's looking good. So now I'm going to bring in my headshots for my panelists. So I already uploaded them to my kind of Canva bank where you can upload things. If you haven't done that before, you can just click this upload files button, or even just drag in from your documents finder tab on your computer. So we have Dr. Mark Sanfrillo. So I'm going to pull him in right here. His headshot's a little close up, but I'm going to double click on it to kind of move his face around so it's centered a little bit. Not the best headshot to use because it's just so skinny. So kind of messed up with our design a little bit, but we're gonna deal with it for now. So we've got Mark's headshot. Then we have Cass. So I'm gonna pull her in, just drag right over there. I'm gonna double click, center it a little bit. Who's next? I think Emily. So we'll pull her in, same thing, double click, make sure she's all centered. And then last is Michelle. We'll pull her in. So maybe I'll make it a little bigger since everyone else's face is kind of bigger. Right, there we go. So we've got our 4 panelists. And we know everyone is equal and we're all lined up. So last piece is we're going to add these titles and their names. So again, for the sake of time, I'm just going to kind of copy paste these guys in. So I've got Dr. Mark Sanfrillo. I'm going to double click. So this is all, the text box is nice and tight. I'm going to move it because what I could do is I could select these 2 things and I could center them like we did earlier, but then that's going to move the circle. And then we're going to have to go back in and do all that again, which not the end of the world, but we could just drag until we get this dotted line because this means that it's centered. So, all right, we know that's centered. I think that looks good. So I'm going to grab Cass's title. I'm going to center her. Yep, nice and centered. I'll do Emily. And then Michelle. All right, so everyone's centered. And I kind of want all these to match, like the same pixel distance between the title and the headshot. So we're 21. So I'm going to select them all, holding down Shift, right click, and then I'm going to align elements at the top. All right. So now we're all 21. All right, it's looking good. So maybe I'll select them all just to kind of make sure it's where I want it to be. Oh yeah, that's perfect. So we're 34. So they're right where they need to be. So yeah, that is kind of how I would go about building a graphic and adding in elements to make sure everything's kind of equidistant and spaced out to look nice and polished. So at the end of building a graphic, I kind of like to make sure everything's where they need to be. I think the text in the pictures, the headshots, are the main focal points. So those are the things that I want to make sure are centered. So I'm going to pick them all and I'm going to click Option. And yep, 40 pixels and 40 pixels. So those are all good. So yeah, we're looking good. Couple other notes. Sorry, Katrina. Last note I was gonna say is when you're building out graphics like this, it's super nice or just nice to be consistent. So one thing we like to do is make sure our time is consistent throughout the graphic, or even like a suite of graphics. So we did P dot M dot, and we did that same thing here. So sometimes you'd see people do something like that, that isn't consistent. So we would do that. But just another tip for best practice. But yeah, I think that's it. That's all I've got. So yeah, I think that's it. Wrapped it up.
All right. Well, thank you, Katie. Again, you keep presenting this stuff, and I was like, I didn't know. I've been doing a lot of this stuff manually, so we love having Katie around to teach us older folks how to actually use the software that we're using every day. So thank you so much for this, Katie. And we do have a couple of questions. So the first one here is Canva Pro has a background remover. Could you remove the background from the headshots and make the photo size smaller inside of the circle? And so I'm not sure about this one. That's what I was like, you might just need to demonstrate it to see, but I'm thinking that the size of the photo is going to be the limiting factor, not necessarily the background. But I don't know. Have you done that
Yeah.
before?
No, that's actually a great point, and I have done that before. So that is what you could do is take his headshot in, and even like you could do this. You could like match the backgrounds, even play with the gradient, or you could do the background remover and do something like that, and then take a larger screenshot and try to play with it that way. Um, just to kind of back it out a little bit. So that's a good point. That is a good hack. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I know that I've done that a lot too, is put things on different backgrounds and then take a screenshot to try to get it smaller in a frame. So yeah, that is actually a nice feature. And so just a note, we will be showing some more about the background remover in a future session. It's something that we as injury prevention professionals do actually really appreciate, to remove some of the things in the backgrounds that we might not want to show. So we are going to be demonstrating that in a future session. But yeah, as she said, it's a great way to also try to get those photos a little more neatly inside those circles. So there was just one other comment that I would have aligned everything manually, and these quick tips save so much time. And I totally agree. That's actually why we asked Katie to come on and do this today. She was showing us just something kind of casually in a meeting, and I was like, hang on, what did you just do? Because as an older Canva user, again, I'm used to doing everything manually. So I know that she has taught me a lot, even just with these kind of simple demonstrations here. So again, really appreciate you bringing your knowledge, Katie. All right, any other questions? Feel free to drop them into the chat. Any other comments or anything? But yeah, our next session, just while we're waiting here, is going to be in June. Tracy, our director of translational research, is going to bring her expertise on how to design PowerPoint. So instead of just kind of blocks of text and maybe, just kind of standard slides, how can you bring some better design to your PowerPoint presentation? So another quick note, last month's session was on brand guidelines and how to enter your brand guidelines into Canva. You might have noticed that Katie was pulling in colors that were related to that T4CIP program because she's got all of her colors already entered into the brand guidelines section of Canva. Her logo and everything was right there. And so if you are not familiar with that, I am going to drop the link to the last month's session into the chat, and go ahead and take a look at that. Brand guidelines are something, again, that make Canva just so much easier and quicker to use. So if you can get those imported, it does save a lot of time. And then the last thing I'm going to do is we did launch our YouTube channel along with some of the instructional videos. We'll have the webinars up there. And then we're going to be producing different types of content to help share kind of the behind the scenes of what we do every day on the translational team. So I'm going to drop in the chat, the YouTube channel, and then also we are on X and on Instagram. And so feel free to follow us there. And then Tracy, put out a call that if anybody had any questions they'd like to have answered for next month, feel free to drop those in the chat too. We'll leave that open for a little bit. You can also email us directly at info@cirtc.org if you've got anything that comes to mind between now and the first or second week of June there. Or if you've got ideas just in general on tips and tricks that you'd love to see, we're here to be of service to you. So we'd always like to provide something that's super helpful. And again, I know that I have learned something today, and we'll be definitely going back to rewatch this video so that I can make those part of my daily practice. So. All right. Well, if that's it, again, I'm going to leave this open for just a little bit to see if anything else comes in, but I think that's it for today. And thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next month. Looking for more HealthCom content? Check out all of our trainings and resources at cirtc.org.